Welcome back. This session is From Commitment to Action, the role of finance in accelerating Southeast Asia's net zero transition. Here to tell us more and moderate the session is Lau Jingyi, our green finance lead in Southeast Asia at the Carbon Trust. Welcome. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Ralph. Good afternoon to our distinguished guests and speakers. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Lau Sini, and I'm the Green Finance Lead of Southeast Asia at the Carbon Trust Singapore office. Today, our panel is From Commitment to Action, the role of finance in accelerating Southeast Asia's net zero transition. And I'm very honored to be the moderator of this panel. Climate remains a hot topic in Southeast Asia, where natural disasters already regularly affect the region, and urgent action is needed to be mitigating or slowing down that crisis. On the positive side, recent years have seen notable developments. A number of Southeast Asian countries like Singapore, Indonesia, and Vietnam have announced net zero commitments. Some financial institutions are also aligning themselves with their country's net zero targets. For example, Singapore banks DBS, OCBC, and UOB recently became signatories to the Net Zero Banking Alliance, while insurance companies like NTUC Income aims to reach net zero by 2050, and among other commitments, to divest from thermal coal mining and coal-fired power plants by 2035. These are all moves in the right direction, and our session today wants to focus on how finance can play a role to accelerate the net zero transition, not only by unlocking more capital for this purpose, but also to better address the hard to abate sectors, identify scalable solutions, and deepen engagements in the ecosystem. With this context in mind, I would like to now take the time to introduce four distinguished speakers who will be sharing their insights with us today. First, I would like to welcome Ms. Hui Shi Li. She's the Senior Vice President in the Corporate Sustainability Office at UOB. In her current role, she supports the development and delivery of the group's sustainable business strategy across UOB's footprint, including sustainable finance product design, innovation, and ESG risk management. Our second speaker today is Dr. Pang Chin Hong. He's the Senior Vice President, Group Sustainability at Frasers Property Limited. Frasers Property is one of the largest listed integrated real estate groups in Singapore and has business operations in residential, office, retail, hospitality, and industrial sectors. Chin Hong has held various positions within the group, including group corporate planning and corporate development. Since 2014, he has been instrumental in spearheading the group corporate sustainability initiatives and reporting and also advancing the group sustainability goals. Next, I would like to welcome Mr. Pradana Murthy. He's the Director of Risk Management at PT Sarana Multi Infrastructure, or what we call PTSMI for short. Park Pradana previously held different roles at PTSMI, including Head of Sustainable Finance, Head of Project Development, Head of Project Showcase Task Force, and Investment and Financing Manager. Last but not least, for speakers today, we have Ms. Mai Nguyen, Senior Associate from Vina Capital, who will be replacing her colleague Kong. Mai has 10 years of experience in sustainability and ESG in Asia Pacific and North America. She is a lead AP and holds a CFA ESG investing certificate. Before joining Vina Capital's ESG department, she was engaged in City of Boston's first zero net carbon building zoning initiative. Thank you to all speakers for joining us today. To kick off our discussion, I would like to turn to our first speaker, Hui Shi from UOB, and it's great to hear that UOB has committed to 2015 net zero target. From UOB's perspective, what does it mean for a bank to pursue net zero, and how does this change UOB's financing decisions? Hui Shi, please.
Thank you, Xingyi. And indeed, we were very excited that we announced our net zero targets back in October 2022. And our net zero targets actually cover 6 sectors, which includes power, automotive, oil and gas, real estate, construction, and steel. And together, these six sectors makes up 60% of our lending portfolio. And what this implies for a commercial bank like UOB is that in these six sectors, we are committed and will be redirecting our capital towards supporting and scaling up relevant products and services to support the transition of this carbon intensive sector. And more importantly, what we at UOB believe is that as we support the decarbonization of these sectors, we need to do so in a manner that supports economic growth and improve energy access, or in more common sort of simplistic terms of what has been discussed extensively, a just transition. And so moving forward, we will be actually reviewing our business processes and to make sure that our lending decisions actually factor in decarbonization as a consideration moving forward. And and we will choose to engage clients in the first instance to design and develop a decarbonization plan and to understand what kind of investments and financing they may need along this journey. And engagement is actually our first priority. And in the event that a client fails to produce a decarbonization plan that is in line with our expectations, we may actually choose not to underwrite such clients. Hello, back to you, Xingyi.
Sorry, I'm having
Xingyi, I think you are on mute.
ah
Mm.
Hi, Jinyi. I think you're on mute right now. If you just try clicking the button again. There you go. You're off mute. Go ahead. We should be able to hear you. Okay. Sorry, Jinyi. I think you may have muted yourself somewhere else, either with a button, maybe on your headset.
can you hear
Just
me?
whilst we wait. Yes, we can now. Yeah, we've got you back. Thank you.
I'm so sorry about that. Thank you so much, Hui Shi. So besides financial institutions like UOB, we do hear about corporates being a very, very important part of this conversation. From what we are seeing here, corporates are increasingly making net zero commitments. And for Fraser's Property, the company has established 5 new sustainability goals in the financial year of 2020, which includes financing the majority of its sustainable asset portfolios with green and sustainable financing by 2024. So if I can turn to Chin Hong, could you please share with us how Fraser Property's sustainability strategy is linked to its financing strategy? Thank you.
Okay, yeah, yeah. Firstly, thanks for inviting me to share today on this topic, linking up, green financing and net zero, which both are very important aspect of sustainability and that have to go hand in hand, to make it a very successful one. And first of all, when it comes to sustainability strategy, we thought very hard on, defining and establishing what's our ultimate goal, right? And what do we want to achieve ultimately? And from there, we actually created various goals to act as enabler or to create a supporting environment that everyone within the company can contribute and help to push towards achieving the ultimate goal. So therefore, we set a goal to achieve net zero by 2050. Like many other companies, or governments have also set up that 2050 goal. This is a step to achieve the ultimate goal, which is to be climate resilient. For the same reason, we have seen many corporations, and government, as I mentioned, setting up this net zero goal. Following the net zero goal, we then move on to set targets or so-called sub-goals that would act as enabler. This is where green and sustainable financing would play that role, which can help to push more green and sustainable projects and investment. And shared by Singi earlier, as you know, at Fraser's Property, we set the goal to finance majority of our asset portfolio with green and sustainable financing by 2024. Yep. So a little bit of a report card on our progress for that. We have been active in securing green and sustainable financing since 2018. In fact, securing one of the very first green loan in Singapore and in the region back in 2018. To date, we have secured 33 green and sustainability loans and 3 green and sustainability bonds totaling over $9 billion. This was a great milestone for us, actually. It actually represents 50% of our net borrowings. And last year, we also launched Singapore's first corporate green retail notes, also known as a bond. And it was very well received, overwhelmed with oversubscription. And certainly, green and sustainable financing fits in very well as part of a sustainability strategy, as it also means that we got to do more sustainable developments or projects to qualify for it. Yep.
That's great, and congratulations your team for all the achievements that you have named earlier. I think Fraser's Property is essentially an example of how the real estate sector is truly very progressive when it comes to talking about sustainable practices. So I think from your perspective, Chin Hong, what do you think financiers can do to encourage real estate players like yourselves to be making net zero commitments or even going further than that? And what are some positive examples that you had when it comes to implementing net zero commitments, as well as the challenges that you had to overcome?
Yep. I think we have arrived at a very good or a great ecosystem right now, that never before that almost all stakeholders from various fronts are driving sustainability change, from governments to financial institutions, corporations to industry bodies, etc. You increasingly feel the pressure from all these stakeholders if your organization has not been progressive in having climate strategy. And well, to encourage real estate players or even corporation from other industries, to set net zero commitments, I think financials or financial institutions can perhaps incentivize more with more encouraging borrowing rates for corporations or their customers. That's definitely one very straightforward way, I believe. Yeah. On a broader aspect, I think everyone would have to play their parts, within their value chain to encourage stakeholders or their stakeholders to do more, right? And regarding your question on positive examples of implementing net zero commitments and challenges, um, well, first of all, let me say that it's not going to be an easy task, right? We do not have all the answers, but commitment is one big step to push for any organization to work on the answers, right? To get to net zero, it also depends a lot on the readiness of the jurisdiction where you operate. In some countries, renewable energy supply will be readily available, which will make net zero commitment easier to achieve. And as you know, places like Singapore, we would have a challenge of even having enough roof to put solar panels, right? And we will need to look at other strategies like solar importation or alternative energy sources like mentioned by Ms. Jacqueline Poe earlier, low carbon hydrogen, right? So that is coming our way. Yeah. And having said that, Fraser's Property, we have piloted some net zero developments, such as a project, if I can highlight, in Melbourne, called Burwood Brickworks, which has been certified as one of the most, or is the most sustainable retail mall in the world. It's not just a net zero carbon building; it's also a positive energy building that generates more energies than it consumes. right? And other example, this is also in Australia, a residential development. This time, we actually offer, home buyers a carbon offset package that allows them to make their home a carbon neutral home. Buying that offset.
Mm.
And these are some examples I thought we hope we could, help to encourage or even inspire our various business units, and also the industry to pursue net zero, or to pursue the not so possible, right? Yeah. And nevertheless, I think sustainability creates lots of opportunities for innovation. Organization, I think, should kind of pivot sooner than later and come on board net zero journey, and probably discover more opportunities while managing the climate risk. Yeah.
Very good, Chin Hong.
Mm.
I'm so glad that you have so many positive examples. I'm sure will inspire so many of us, to consider these alternatives. And I think you mentioned many times in your speech around the importance of energy. And so I think, we all would have heard at one point or another how important the energy sector is, especially when it comes to the topic of energy transition. And I think, when we talk about energy transition, we are always thinking about either phasing out or decommissioning inefficient coal-fired power plants or shifting to environmentally friendly energy sources. Maybe I would like to turn to Indonesia at this point because the Ministry of Finance has appointed a PTSMI as the Energy Transition Mechanism country platform manager to manage various sources of energy transition funding in the country. So, Park Pradana, could you tell us more about how this platform works and what does this mean for capital providers and companies? Over to you.
Yeah, thank you. I think apologies. I think my camera has frozen somewhat, but I hope my voice can be heard.
Yes.
So I think first I need to explain why Indonesia needs energy transitions. I think we are part of the global community, and that the fact that Indonesia is the third largest producer of coal in the world, and of our energy mix, 60% and more than 60% coming from coal. So we've got to do our parts in the climate change agenda. And since the years ago, from Paris Agreement, COP26, COP27, we've kept our commitments, and particularly we kept on increasing our targets from I think the NDC target from Indonesia has come up recently from 29% to 32% with our own effort, or 41% increase to 43% with international support. And the last, our commitment has been shown globally at the G20 presidency last year, where we are very much focused on the energy transitions as part of the main agenda that's been raised in the G20 summit. And part of that solution that we offered is that we are creating a blended finance platform called Energy Transition Mechanism country platform that SMI was appointed to become the manager of that platform. And I think that's a huge undertaking in a way that there's so much needs to be done, and there's two main parts of the energy transition in Indonesia. One, of course, the early decommissioning of coal-fired power plants, as that we have so many coal-fired power plants, and most of them are quite young. And that needs to be speed up the reduction of the capacity of the coal-fired power plants to make ways to scaling up the renewable energy mix. Yeah. So that's the two parts: the reduction of coal-fired power plants and the scaling up of renewable energy mix. So that's we've launched the ETM country platform back in November during the G20. We've signed with so many partners, 14 that we signed the MOU in Bali, but I think in principle that we need collaborative support, from all parties to make the energy transition in Indonesia happen.
That's great. Thank you so much for that, Pak. I think at this point, we also want to think about another country in Southeast Asia, Vietnam, that has made net zero commitments at the national level. And we do hear of such a huge potential for more investments in the green sectors. Vina Capital, as we know, has had a very long track record of investing in Vietnam. And since it was founded in 2003, if I may turn to Mai at this point, how has the green financing landscape in Vietnam changed over the years? And how does Vina Capital see its role in the net zero transition? And also, of course, if you have any examples of how you have worked with the investees on this front. Mai, over to you.
Thank you, Sis, and it was great listening to the other speaker talking about their involvement in this net zero transitions. So yes, first of all, because since you mentioned Vietnamese government commitment, so I would like to talk about a little bit about the net zero landscape in Vietnam at the moment. So Vietnamese government has committed to achieve a net zero by 2050 during COP26, and also we continue that commitment in COP27. And since then, the government has been have some activities in order to pursue that target. For example, we start some legal framework to support the countries in different sectors to take on the first movement toward the zero net target. For example, we have the taxonomy initiative, and also we have some green bond program that's coming this year and next year. So since the countries really announced the commitment to net zero target, we also see some new investment coming to the countries. For example, we have Lego, it's the big Danish companies. They just have started invest billions of dollars in Vietnam to build their net zero factory in the southern part of Vietnam. From Vina Capitals, yes, Vina Capital has been investing in Vietnam since 2003, and we've been a responsible investor, and we always cares about the products that we develop to invest in Vietnam, and we see the obvious trends in the last decades that Vietnam is transition to greener and more sustainable direction. And at Vina Capital, we start some green energy projects, such as we start an investment on the NLG, and also we open a new business to invest in renewable energies. We also have real estate, and we pursue green building certificate, not like like Fraser's Jin Hoon that mentioned about properties. And also at the moment we're looking for the new business opportunity, which is carbon credit trading. And Vietnam, there's a lot of potentials for that, so we really working on it, and we looking for partners around Southeast Asia at the moment to develop the carbon credit trading in Vietnam. And also, you might heard that Vietnam recently has announced the GETP, Just Energy Transition Partnership Agreement, which we will receive around more than $15 billion to help Vietnam to phase out the high carbon emission energies and pursue greener energies such as like solars and wind energies. And at Vina Capital, we're also looking for the new co-investment opportunities in offshore as well as onshore wind powers. So that is very just to give you an overview about Vietnam and also what we've been working at Vina Capital in order to contribute to the net zero transition of the countries and the Southeast Asia regions.
Thank you so much. Mai, can you hear me?
Yeah, sure. Over to you.
Thank you so much. And I think you have touched on a number of very interesting developments in Vietnam, and I think they are all really things that people would be looking out for in 2023. I am just thinking also as we were running these events, we have a number of questions that have come in related to what we call the hard to abate sectors. These are emissions that tend to occur in either the heavy industry, such as the cement, steel, and chemicals, or the heavy duty transport, for example, shipping and aviation. And we know that a lot of these activities are um, the ones that precisely form the backbone of many Southeast Asian economies. If I may turn to Hui Shi at this point, how do private banks like UOB see its role in facilitating a net zero transition in the wider Southeast Asian region? And what are some improvements UOB hopes to see from clients who come from these hard to abate sectors? Over to you.
Thank you, Xingyi. So at UOB, what we have started to realize as we start engaging our clients is that a lot of the SMEs, especially in these hard to abate sectors, have yet to figure out what exactly is sustainability. So generally, I would say classify that there is low level awareness among SMEs. So what UOB has started to do is we have developed a sustainability compass to raise the education awareness. This tool is actually free on our website for customers to try out to identify which stage of the sustainability journey that they are on. And there are some action plans that will come out of this toolkit that will allow them to look at how they may want to consider sustainability and start to decarbonize. The second way we have encouraged and encourage companies is to actually start to measure their carbon footprint, because you can't really decarbonize what you don't know. And once you start to measure, you identify the pain points where you generate significant carbon emissions, and you start to take steps to gradually decarbonize your own operational footprint. And also, as we engage the customers, what we are actually engaging with them is a lot of the trends that are coming and looking at their products and services and how future ready are these products and services. So sharing with them some of the industry trends that we have been seeing, and look at, based on our understanding of the ecosystem, how they can actually potentially pivot their business model to one that is more sustainable. So we are engaging with the customers on three fronts. One, supporting them to understand their own operational emission footprint, raising awareness around sustainability and the action plans that they can actually take, and also sharing with them ecosystem trends and perspectives so that they can future-proof their business. And on the government and the regulator fronts, what we have been doing is to support conversations around SMEs needs needs to decarbonize. So whether there are incentive schemes that governments can consider, and bring some of this very difficult concept of just transition to the market, supporting conversations so that we can actually understand how each sector should decarbonize at what pace, and how mature are the technologies, and what additional technologies needs to be developed to support the sector to decarbonize.
Thank you so much, Hui Shi. That was very, very insightful, and I think it's good to know some of the initiatives that UOB has been undertaking to support these different challenges with our hard to abate sector clients. Perhaps I wanted to direct one of the questions from the audience here. They talk about as financial institutions are announcing net zero targets, these targets must be matched by ambitious climate action. So, to what extent are the targets and climate action in Southeast Asia sufficiently ambitious, and how can we better evidence impacts on the ground? Maybe I would perhaps pass the question to Mai from Vina, if you have any thoughts on this.
Oh, yeah, right. So, talking about how ambitious the target is, I think, well, Vietnam government's target by 2050 is not like too aggressive, but it's ambitious enough, provided our situation at the moment, our economies and others activities. And I think from the financial institution perspective, is not we do not consider the net zero target only, but we also work hard to find a business case. Because when we invest, we need to bring the financial performance, which should be decent. So it's not only about looking for green energy investment opportunity, but we're looking for good investment opportunities. And as I mentioned earlier, at Vienna Capital, we're looking for a lot of business case, and we study meticulously onshore wind energy, offshore wind energies, and where we see the investable case, we will go further, and by that we contribute to the like the common movement of the green journeys of the countries, and that is how we approach to contribute to the net zero at the moment.
Thank you so much, Mai. This is really helpful and really lots of things to be thinking about in terms of what financial institutions can do. I'm not sure if Hui Shi, you have a view on this. How do you think UOB is trying to evidence that impact on the ground?
So we made our commitments in October last year, and we are still in the process of thinking through our net zero operationalization and effectively embedding them into our business process. So there will be some sort of actions or targets that actually come out from the net zero commitment, essentially turning commitments into action, right? Which is the theme of this panel. So what we expect is annual reporting at the minimum against the commitments that have made, the carbon intensity of our portfolio. But I think what we will also start effectively thinking about is articulating the impact metric of our lending activities, and the exact form and shape of this metric is still being thought through. But it could be, for example, the amount of renewable financing that we provide and how much electricity generation that has been. So really thinking about within the real economy, the kind of impact, the positive impact or the contribution to the sustainability agenda that is going to have. But of course, we do also have to think about from the data collection perspective, how are companies that we finance going to provide this data? Because it is something that is actually not well embedded in the banking system today. And as we start to think about how to report this metric, we also need companies who are involved in such activities to be capable of providing the data to the bank so that we can actually report the impact cumulatively.
Great. Thank you so much, Hui Shi. I think one of the questions from the audience and the top most voted question is really looking at take-up rates for green financing, right? So you talked about what kind of evidence you need on the ground, but at the same time, how do you then get more companies being interested in green financing, and also making sure that they look at green financing as a very attractive source of capital. So the question we have here from the audience is, how have the current global environment of global energy crunch and high interest rates affected green financing in Southeast Asia, and whether adjustments are needed to improve the green financing take-up rate? Maybe I'll ask Hui Shi as well, since you did talk a little bit about your experience.
Okay, so it really depends on the market segment, but generally across, we have seen increasing interest in green financing. And obviously, in the core markets that UOB operate, Singapore obviously forms the bulk of our green financing. But increasingly, we are also seeing Malaysia, Thailand, and even Vietnam having interest. And that has to do with a bit of the regulatory environment. So regulators are starting to understand climate risk, and as they engage banks, they actually require banks to demonstrate sustainability credentials, whether it's from the risk management perspective or from supporting the main economy to decarbonize. So we are having a lot of conversations with regulators on that, and where the market is most mature within ASEAN is actually still within Singapore, where the regulations are slightly more ahead in terms of what banks are required to do, and where there are clear regulations supporting sectors to decarbonize, like the built environment sector, for example. And in terms of whether or not the energy crisis has actually, and the high interest rate environment has led to a setback, I think it's two-pronged. We may have experienced short-term setback currently because there is an energy crunch and we may need to burn more thermal coal, natural gas. But at the end of the day, energy security also comes into play, and it may have given food for thought for countries who are actually looking at increasing their power generation to think about renewables, and whether or not their geography within their country is actually suited to deploy renewables over thermal coal and natural gas. And in terms of the high interest rate environment, I think this is here to stay, and it is part of the cost that business have to factor in as they go about investing in their projects. So I do think that in terms of the hurdle rate, it is likely going to continue to factor in moving forward, and that might sort of affect the sort of bankability of projects.
Yeah, and I think Hui Shi, you brought up a really good point that, it's not just about interest rates and the financials. It's really something that requires the right environment and the right factors externally to help create the right conditions for green financing to fly. And I think we do have a question from the audience looking at the enabling environment. This is with regards to Indonesia. Are there new enabling policies in Indonesia that are being developed to support the growth of renewable energy, especially distributed renewable energy systems? I think the best person to address this might be Pradana, if I may turn to you.
Thank you, Sunyi. I think recently, last year, there was a presidential regulations issued on renewable energy, new and renewable energy that was focused primarily on tariff settings. That the intention is to give a more playing field between the renewables and carbon or fossil fuel based energy. That's one, and this year I think we hopefully we're going to see a carbon tax policy that again will create a more level playing field and further induce the development of carbon market to further incentivize the development of green energy. But I think Indonesia is facing a challenge to first to free up space, of the energy mix. First to try to reduce the capacity of coal-fired power plants, because without that, it's hard to scale up the renewable energy. But the challenge here is the financing, because financing now is becoming more and more restricted towards coal assets. There's taxonomy, including in Indonesia. So I think we need to do something on the taxonomy front by introducing transition taxonomy. We've started to engage and discuss with our Financial Service Authority, the OJK, to try to create some transition taxonomy. But at the same time, we hope that in the international arena, the transition taxonomy can also be discussed, and in the hope to be able to mobilize private capital. Yeah. So I think that's also going to help and trying to finance coal asset, but not in the effort of increasing the capacity, but the other way around to reduce the capacity. So that's what we're trying to do with the regulator at the moment.
I see. This is really fascinating, Pak Pradana, and I think you did, bring out some important points around the importance of some of the regulations in facilitating the transition. There's actually a very interesting question that came in through our participants, and they did come up with this question around is it actually not easier and cheaper to go straight to net zero if we do so through renewables, improving the buildings, top-down planning, as compared to trying to tackle legacy infrastructure? Maybe I'll direct that question to Pak Pradana, and then maybe Chin Hong, you also have a view on this.
I will start from the infrastructure aspect first, yeah, because that's our specialty.
Yeah.
So basically, in Indonesia, particularly, yeah, the situation is probably quite specific because we are a country of many islands. The grid is not well connected, as you know. So there's a lot of hardship in trying to promote renewable energy in that condition. Yeah. So that's why we first we need, as I mentioned before, we need measures, policies that are across the board. Yeah. But also we need to go down and have a look at regional level. Yeah. And trying to induce and apply policies that can induce energy transition at the regional and local level. So that's is going to be important in Indonesia as well, and that's going to be connected with the just transition aspect of it, because as we transition the energy, Indonesia also realized that the economy needs to be transformed as well, because we are going to leave fossil fuel economy to the low carbon economy.
Thank you so much. How about Chin Hong?
Yeah, if I can continue on that, I think it's really when it comes to net zero, whether there's definitely not an easy task, definitely not going to be cheap, I believe, well, there are a couple of strategies here, right? We talk about, when we talk about net zero via renewables, well, that let's look at, the supply and the demand, right? So, mainly, if you look at the demand, basically the consumption side from all of us, right? We consume energies, right? And the other side of it is the supply, whether we can make, the energy supply all renewable, or carbon neutral, right? Either way, you can make it work, right? If you have no consumption, you don't need a supply. The key thing is how to balance that, and both have to kind of work hand in hand, at the same time. When we increase our renewable supply, we have to reduce our consumption, right? So that, that it kind of work to go towards net zero or carbon neutral. And for buildings especially, or the built environment, as I think most of us are kind of aware, is one of the large emitter. We kind of account for 40%, close to 40% of the global carbon emission. And there's a need for all of us, right, to kind of lower our kind of energy consumption within our buildings, and that would definitely helps. And also, I think when it comes to planning, like I think Singapore is a good example that, we have goals to get to, 80% of our buildings being green buildings. That actually means lower, carbon footprint, lower energy requirements. And I think most of the other countries who actually aims to, reach that, and we all have legacy infrastructure, legacy buildings, old buildings that, it's very hard to kind of do some, as enhancement, whether you tear down or redevelop to more efficient buildings, we all have that legacies. Yeah, but I think with today's technologies and solution, I think we can kind of mitigate that. Yeah.
Thank you so much, and I think you brought out a really important point, which we need to be thinking a lot more about is what kind of technologies can help us accelerate that net zero transition and to get us to where we need to be. We do have also some questions from the audience. Looking at from your experience so far in your different fields, what do you think we should be doing differently in 2023? Maybe I can go one round to hear from our different speakers. Maybe I'll start from my top right hand corner, Mai, and then Pak Pradana, Chin Hong, and then Hui Shi.
Right. So, would you like me to continue with the previous questions, or?
I think the audience is asking, what do you think you will do differently in 2023, given what you have learned so far on the net zero journey?
All right. So that is good questions. It sounds like a New Year resolution, and so I think what would we do differently? Actually, when we planned to learn about our business case, we have the plan ahead, and we also had some lesson from the past, but it's more about because our investment in energies, for example, or real estate, is not a short-term investment just for like a couple months or 1 or 2 years, but it's more about like the terms of over the course of 5 to 10 years. So we need to stick with our plan. Of course, we need to add some new information. For example, we have new interest rate, which is higher. Also, but we have some other positive news. For example, Vietnam gets some new agreement on green building. So based on that kind of change, we would again stick with our plan, and we would just continue and adjust the plan to meet our target, because yes, our target is to invest more in renewable energies. So I think it's hard because to change just for 1 year or two, and the situation in Vietnam and in the world right now, we have some uncertainties. There's only uncertainties, but we don't know how long these uncertainties will last. So we pretty just adjust, or maybe we can slow down or faster 1 or 2 activity, but in general, I think we just continue with the plan we has laid out in the previous years. Yes.
Sure, thank you so much, Mai. So we now continue with plan and adjust accordingly. How about Pradana? What will you do differently in 2023?
Before I touch upon what we will do differently, what we will continue to do and increase is to actually practice what we preach. Yeah. To try to accelerate our net zero target, as well as trying to instill best practices in the financial industry. So that's what we are trying to continue to do and to increase. What we will try to do differently, again, still related to our mandate, which is in the infrastructure sectors. Yeah, I think in the renewable energy, I think we need to explore areas that we haven't explored. Yeah, subsectors. Yeah, so we've done geothermal, hydro, and other, but I think we need to keep expanding our subsectors in renewable energy. The energy conservations, yeah, the energy efficiency sphere. I think thank you very much, Carbon Trust. It has been helping us on creating a study and business models on that. Yeah, we will try to look into that. But one thing major that we have just recently realized is that I think we have to be able to do something on the coal side. because since 2019, actually, SMI stopped adding our portfolio in coal, but we realized that renewable energy is not going to be accelerated if we're not doing anything with our coal fleets. Yeah, so we need to look into deeply in our coal fleets and what we can actually do on that, and the capital that we can unlock. Yeah, whether that need to be early decommissions or to repurpose into something else. That's we are going to focus on this year.
That sounds really positive. And all the best to you, Pak Pradhan, for this very ambitious plan you have ahead. How about Chin Hong? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, what can we do differently? I guess, as we kind of learn or being part of this journey is let's get more ambitious each year, right? And especially, I think if we picked up the knowledge, I think we're more comfortable to kind of explore or discover more in this journey. And I mentioned about solution and technologies. I think that's probably one of the areas that each of us can every year try to maybe explore one new solution, one new technology, right? And pilot new initiative. I guess that would be the steps in the journeys, towards decarbonization. And I think we all have a limited time and resources. I guess allocate the time or within the team itself. Exploring some of the solution and technology. I think that'll be useful. And I think resources, that's another one. Especially I think when it comes to sustainability, I think the right team, the right people should be put in place, and hopefully each year we can all allocate new resources to this area.
Fantastic, Chin Hong. I think you really nicely sum up what we are trying to discuss for our panel today. And just to summarize some of the key things that I've really learned from all of you, the importance of having right regulations to create the enabling environment, and also seeing how fast things are moving on the ground, and hearing all your ambition makes me so much more encouraged that we are going to see momentum continuing into 2023. You also talked about having some strategies and plans in place, and also having a good relationship with a lot of your investees, your borrowers, to be able to deliver on those commitments. I think finally the point around technology is such a critical point in helping us accelerate that transition and making sure that we get to where we need to be. And so I think with that, I just want to thank all our speakers today, especially our four speakers here on this panel with me, Chin Hong, Mai, Pak Pradana, as well as Hui Shi. Which I hope you enjoyed the discussion today, and thank you so much for your time.